Okay, students, here we are at the room tour for Mr. Ginorio's classroom. What I'm going to do is take you around and show you everything that needs to be seen. First of all, we are approaching the door where we does our dooring. There's a wise saying on it by one of the few feminists I respect because she's intellectually honest. You can read that when you come in. Now, here we are at the door where we come and go from. Now, in this classroom, you're going to have to be face-to-face with people as they come and as you go, and on the porch here. So try not to cough in each other's faces. Here we have the trash can where we throw away our trash, the fire extinguisher, and over here by the door are our emergency evacuation maps and plans. Also by the door we have our fire alarm and our fire panel. And we'll come back to that later. Now, as we go around, we've got a bunch of books on the top of these shelves that I am giving away. All you have to do is tell me you want one, I'll sign it out to you, and you will have it. The stuff down here is not being given away. Those are mine. You can borrow them from class, but these up here are being given away. The pencil sharpener, one of our 2 wall clocks, the temperature control, which I will control. Old Glory, it's a grand old flag. It's a high-flying flag. And we have here a number of portraits of people that I really respect. For example, Winston Churchill and Ronald Reagan, both men that arguably saved the world by being stubborn. In the summer of 1940, France had fallen in 6 weeks to Corporal Hitler, something that had not happened in World War I and 4.5 years of bloody trench warfare. And the cognoscenti, the wise people within the British Empire, said, oh, we should do a deal with Hitler. And Hitler was offering the best deal he ever offered anyone because the English were fellow Anglo-Saxons. They were Germans, Germanic peoples. Churchill alone said no. We will fight them on the beaches. We will fight them in the hills. We will fight them on the streets. We will never surrender. And his choice to keep fighting kept Britain in the war alone against Nazi Germany while America prepared for war and the Russians collaborated with Hitler. Churchill saves the world because had Britain fallen, World War II would have ended in a German victory in the summer of 1940. Ronald Reagan, in the early 1980s, was beset by a nuclear freeze movement in Europe and the United States. Oh, we don't want to press the Russians. We don't want to modernize our intermediary nuclear missiles in Europe. It might provoke the Russians. We should have a nuclear freeze. Reagan said, no, we're going to press the Soviets. We're going to press the communist Russians, and we're going to make them work for it in terms of ruling the world. His pressure caused the Soviet Union to collapse, their economy to collapse, and we won the Cold War because of it. Both these men saved the world. Simon Wiesenthal is the famous Nazi hunter. Harry Truman, Democrat president, who stood up to the Soviets at the end of World War II, chose to drop the atomic bombs on Japan, and set the stage for us to fight the Cold War rather than surrender. Anton Ivanovich Denikin, a white Russian general who fought the communists early on, Billy Martin, a scrappy New York Yankees manager, and Whittaker Chambers, a man who sacrificed his career for the sake of fighting communism. So now we go back. We've got the chairs and such all spaced out so that people can be as free from the disease as possible. We've got blackboards. We've got textbooks, which you all are going to take out of here fairly soon. The board on the left is typically going to be for the European history. The board on the right is typically going to be for the ancient and medieval history. We've got my computer here, which is used for showing videos, and the video screen up here. More stuff looking around. We've got lots of books and maps on the walls. There's the classroom camera, which is going to film all things for people at home, and the microphone. That is a picture of the man who stood up to a line of tanks in June of 1989. People exactly my age in the spring of 1989 were protesting against the Chinese Communist government as the Soviet Union was falling, as the Berlin Wall was going to fall. People in China wanted freedom from the communists. For months, the communists let this happen. They wanted to see what would happen. Like the Soviets, they were afraid of pressing too hard on the suppression button. But on the night of June 3rd, 4th, 1989, the Communist Party sent in the tanks. The tanks were occupied by rural Chinese soldiers. There's a big divide between the town and the farm in China. And these rural soldiers could be relied upon to bust some heads because the protesters were largely college-educated and college students. That is one reason, by the way, because the communists had to cherry-pick the units they could rely on for this, that these tanks are unoccupied or unaccompanied by foot soldiers, by infantry. Well, as dawn of June 4th, 1989 approached, the tanks were rumbling towards the Plaza of Heavenly Peace, Tiananmen Square, in order to massacre the protesters. But they didn't want it to be on international television. So all of the reporters in China, in Beijing, were gathered into this hotel and were set on the side of the hotel that faced away from the Tiananmen Square. But as the tanks approached, a cameraman who had a satellite uplink started recording the scene of the tanks approaching. And then this amazing man, a very average, everyday man, but amazing, was walking to work with a cardboard briefcase and a plastic bag lunch. And he saw the tanks and he knew what was going to happen. He had lived through the Great Leap Forward. He had lived through the Cultural Revolution. He knew that these soldiers were going to kill the hopes of the protesters. And he made a decision that would make sure that he would never again see his home, never again see his family, never again go to work, never again have another tomorrow. He stepped off the sidewalk, off the curb, into the street, into the path of history. He stood in front of the tanks and said, "Stop! These are our future. They're not enemies of the people. They are the people. Don't do this terrible thing. Stop and think." And the amazing thing is the tanks stopped. In communist China, you don't do anything without orders. So the lead tank that had the radio in it called for orders. And as this happens, this scene is unfolding on international television. I saw it live as it was broadcast by satellite. And then the amazing thing happens. The tanks back up and try to go around him. Now, at this point, most people would say he's done his job. But the man, again, jumps in front of them. He steps in front of them trying to go around him and says, "Stop! These are our people. Don't do that. Don't do this horrible thing." This went on for almost 5 minutes. At the end of the 5 minutes, the tanks had tried going around him every which way, and every time he got in their way. One man against a line of Russian T-54 tanks. Russian-built, Chinese-occupied. Finally, the the Public Safety Bureau, the Chinese SS, got into the hotel, moved the cameraman off the balcony, and nobody was able to film this intersection for the next couple of weeks. When they did, there was a slight stain on the concrete. That man didn't know what he gave his life for, whether it was going to be for a free China or whether he'd be a footnote in history. But without people like him, who are willing to stand up against seemingly impossible odds, we would still be hanging from the trees, grunting, and hitting each other with clubs, living lives of 15 to 25 years, short, mean, and brutal. Every advance that we've ever had in freedom and in culture has come because one person has had a vision and has been willing to put it all on the line for that vision. That is one of the lessons of history. You never know how the results of your choices will turn out, but acting from conscience is the only way that progress really happens. Now, as we move over here, you'll see my desk. These shelves are going to be fairly important. In periods 4, 5, and 6, this is where all of the work for the European history classes will happen. And here are a bunch of chapter surveys that you can get. Here's the office supplies that you all have access to, a bunch of encyclopedias and dictionaries that you have access to, and atlases. Here's where the ancient history class is on the right, periods 1, 2, and 3, and a bunch of case studies. Here's emergency supplies for the classroom in case we have an extended lockdown. Here's the other clock in the classroom, fans which I shall control, not you. And we've got up here the various syllabi for European history, AP Euro, Honors Ancient, and College Preparatory and Ancient History. Along with some cartoons that students drew of or for me, and some important photographs. Here, for example, is as the Berlin Wall is being built, Stasi runs to the west to escape from communism to freedom. Here's a man watching the French regimental colors being carried out through the city of Marseille as the Nazis are taking over. This is the face of defeat. Here we have, in the Rhodesian Bush War, the face of two soldiers fighting for Rhodesia against the communist guerrillas, a member of the Black Militia and a member of the White Rhodesian Army. I just think these are amazing faces of war. There's an American soldier fighting in Afghanistan or Iraq. The moon landings, which did happen, my father-in-law was involved in it, and the flag raising at Iwo Jima, and the pulling down of the statue of Saddam Hussein. Here's one of my heroes. Her name is Ayaan Hirsi Ali. She was born in Somalia, grew up a devout fundamentalist Muslim, and when her father set up an arranged marriage for her, she fled Somalia and eventually ended up in Holland. In Holland, her family pursued her to try to get her back. And there she began having second thoughts about fundamentalist Islam. She made a film with a Dutch filmmaker called Submission, Part 1, and the Dutch filmmaker was knifed to death in the street by a radical Islamic terrorist. She had to flee Holland to the United States, where she has written a number of books. Nomad and Infidel talk about her personal experiences growing up, experiencing the genital mutilation that happens to Somali Muslim women as a part of growing up, experiencing the cloistered life, and trying to break away from it. To me, her most compelling book is a book called Reformation, Why Islam... Heretic, why Islam needs to undergo a reformation today. And her thesis is that, like the Christian faith 500 years ago needed to undergo a reformation in order for the modern world to happen, so Islam, which is in her mind rooted in medieval thought, needs to go and undergo a reformation to allow it to be both itself and modern. Here is the bathroom pass and the bathroom sign-out sheet. You don't need to ask me to go to the bathroom. All you need to do is, if nobody has signed out the pass, take the pass, sign it out, put your name, where you're going, when you left, when you got back, put your name, where you're going, when you left, when you got back, and take the pass. And when you're done, you sign back in, put the pass back, and the next person can do it. So anyone can leave if the pass is here, but only one person can leave at a time. If you have an emergency, come see me, or ask at that point. Finally, you're going to hear this a lot at first, but I might as well say it here. This class comes with a warning. A trigger warning. Because again, I'm not politically correct, and I'm not trying to spare your feelings or avoid offending you. Warning. This is a history classroom. We routinely discuss controversial subjects such as politics, religion, right and wrong. Be prepared to be irritated, offended, and or provoked into discussions about ideals or ideas concerning ultimate truth. Such emotional reactions are a necessary part of the process of bringing history vividly to life. After all, if ultimate truth is being discussed and someone doesn't get their temper sparked, the discussion is probably being conducted on a superficial level. Substantive discussions of ultimate truth allow all participants to explore and consider their own deeply cherished beliefs as they consider the dilemmas faced by our ancestors. Core beliefs are often mutually exclusive. When discussing them, it is not always possible to find a compromise. Sometimes, in order for one person's core belief to be true, others equally cherished would have to be false. In such a conversation, my role is to moderate and guide the discussion. While I may clarify what is fact, no one, neither you nor me, has a monopoly on truth. The teacher, that's me, will ensure that the discussion is conducted in a well-mannered fashion where every participant may confidently state a controversial idea without fear of personal ridicule. Intense disagreement over ideas is no justification for being a lout or for being rude. A person's true quality is shown not by how they treat those with whom they agree, but rather by how they treat those with diametrically opposed convictions. We would all do well to remember that in this classroom, our ultimate goal is to study what people in the past thought was worth living for, dying for, or killing for. It's not about what you or I believe, although, if we're wise, we will consider our beliefs as we learn more and more about what happened in the past. And here we are, back to the door again, and back to the beginning. I thank you for your time, and hope that this was a valuable room tour. I am trying to look and see if there's anything else. If you look at the board, the two little boards on the left, to the left of the big whiteboards, the two little whiteboards are often places where I will put announcements. But you have your homework here on the bulletin board, and there may be announcements up there. So I think that's all. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful day.